So they like integrating biometrics as well, because there's a number of companies that are doing some really, really interesting things with store cameras and looking at where people go in the store, their movement patterns, what have you.
Well, for me, it's not so much about biometrics as it is thinking about the world of sensors. Sensors on everything, right? Like our cell phones are sensors, right? Because as soon as you give an app permission to access your GPS information, your location, anyone who's working with them, and then has access to that. So we have sensors on us. I saw a really interesting presentation by someone working with New York City. And it was a data science conference at NYU. And this guy was talking about the challenge of how they make sure that the city bike racks always have some bikes in them, right? You've all seen the city bike racks, right? And so what happens is that he said there are certain natural patterns, so they have sensors. I can't remember if he said the sensors are on the racks or the sensors are on the bikes, but they're able to see, like there are certain natural flows. There are certain places where the inflow and the outflow is roughly the same. And then there are other places like where people might come in to Penn Station or something and get on a bike. And so they have a certain predictable depletion pattern throughout the day. And so they know, they have trucks that drive around with bikes. So they know how to deploy those trucks and those bikes based upon sensors. It's totally a big data problem. It's based upon, data science. It's big data combined with predictive analytics. So I mean, there are sensors in store that people are starting to use. A little controversial, but it's going to happen in a privacy-protected way. The sensing devices that track your movement in store can be based upon Bluetooth, or Apple has something called iBeacon, right? So there are different technologies that are more precise, than RFID or whatever. So they're able. So I mean, and it's kind of like, in a way, tracking movement through a store is a little bit like tracking click streams at a website, right? So people, retailers want to know, how people are moving through this store because it might have an implication for, for shelf layout and store layout.
You referenced market research and surveys and some of the more traditional methods, and I've also seen articles where it suggests that the market research industry is perhaps more behind than some other sectors, in fact, in terms of leveraging and capitalizing on big data. What do you think they need to do to catch up? Do you think this just doesn't bode well for the future of that sector generally? Just curious in your perspective.
That's a good question. That feeds into some points I forgot to make. The first thing is marketing research. And by the way, I mean, some marketing researchers, there are a couple in this room who I happen to know, very progressive. So I'm not painting with a broad brush. But marketing research has a certain culture to it, a certain mentality. The culture is really based around managing projects that are usually survey-based projects. So kind of the way you succeed in marketing research is managing a project that has a beginning and an end and is intended to be a fairly complete database. And you have to stop having that mentality. You have to realize that what you learn from a survey has to be combined with other information to be made complete, because the survey would have to be about 7 hours long to ever come close to the amount of data you really need. Some of them are, right? But so what are some more progressive people doing? Well, some, for example, have done things like there's a couple of panel companies that, for example, where they have millions of panelists, they encourage people to log in with their Facebook profile. Now, when you use social login, what that does is there's a protocol called OAuth permissioning. OAuth, OAuth permissioning. And what it does is, I know you've all experienced it, where you want to sign up for something, you want to log into something using your Facebook or Twitter profile, and it's or download an app or something like that in your smartphone or tablet, and it asks you, it says, the application would like access to your this, and this. Okay, it's always a subset of about 9 pages of stuff they could be asking for. So different apps will ask for different things depending on the business idea that they have in mind and the kind of data that they want. But if somebody logs into a marketing research survey panel with their Facebook profile, now they've given permission to that panel company to access stuff about them in Facebook. Now, I don't think it's malicious. I don't think it's invasive. I think what they're trying to learn is, so what brands do they like? You know, did they like Coke? Did they like Pepsi? Did they like this? Did they like J-Lo? Did they like another celebrity? You know, they're trying to learn about their interests. You know, so that would be information that you'd want to combine. Now, some others will do things like put a 1-by-1 tracking pixel in the survey. So when the survey gets served up, what happens is that this is a cool trick. Everybody uses it. It's a trick, though. Yeah, it is. It's like whenever you, that's the way, you know when you'll read about, people clicking on an ad, and then you're able to calculate a conversion rate. Well, the conversion rate is the combination of knowing that a certain user saw an ad with the fact that they converted, which might be they're making a purchase or downloading information or signing up for something, whatever you define a conversion to be. That usually is based upon having a tracking pixel, a 1-by-1 pixel, so that what it does is it forces, when the page loads, it forces that request of the page being loaded to another server that can keep track of this person, who has a cookie that indicates that they saw an ad. Also, I now know that they actually made a purchase, so I can match those two things.
Yeah, my question is, and maybe it's not your area of expertise. I'm not in marketing research. I am responsible for the healthcare practice. And in healthcare, I find my clients, they're the big clients, big pharma, biotechs, hospital chains, and even the government now is a big client, struggling with this idea of how to get predictive data to understand, for example, the behavior of women if, for example, stage 4 breast cancer is not the same as somebody who was just newly diagnosed. And what I see is the research department relying still on very traditional types of research. Do you have any thoughts about how this transformation is being leveraged in healthcare?
I haven't specifically worked with the kind of problem that you're talking about, but I will say that part of the way to think that through is to think through naturally what you would do. What you naturally would do is you would seek out certain sites, you'd search using certain terms, you exhibit certain behaviors, you like certain brands or organizations or whatever on Facebook. So you engage in certain behaviors, and you probably follow certain forums, you follow certain bloggers perhaps, like people might be blogging about their personal experience, that type of thing. So putting all of that together, I mean, there are, so if, for example, if you're an organization dealing with that issue, either the patient or the caregiver, what you want to do is gain insight into ways in which people seek guidance and solace, and the way they connect in that way. And a lot of that is available via digital if you're looking for it. Now, there are a couple of other assets to know about if you're trying to, and so there's not just one arrow in the quiver here. There are also panels, like large panels, 500,000, 1 million, more than 1 million people who've agreed to have metering software put on their computers or maybe their other devices. So you can track complete clickstream behaviors. And you also can do surveys to those people.
Well, that's what
Yeah, so there are ways of linking together survey information with clickstream behavior to get a very complete view. And then to do that in a way that also helps you. So if you wanted to help people who might be seeking that kind of help, if you want to help them, if you want to advertise and help them find the right resources, you know, you would use that to identify keywords you should be buying in search, or to identify advertising that you might want to be running, you know, and where you'd be running that advertising and that type of thing. So I'd say there's a lot you can do, you know, without delving into the specifics, but there's a lot.